I'm Naveen Day. This is Forum Daily West. Here are some of the top stories we've been following. Nova Scotia RCMP have scaled back a massive search for 2 missing children, saying there is little chance they are still alive. Plus, Albertans weigh the pros and cons of separation from Canada. We hear from those in favor and those against. And tensions escalate as Pakistan vows retaliation to Indian airstrikes that killed 31 people. Thanks so much for joining us. Police in Nova Scotia are scaling back their search for 2 missing children, saying there's little chance they are alive. The RCMP say the active search will be reduced to concentrate on more specific areas, including places that have already been looked at. 6-year-old Lily Sullivan and 4-year-old Jack Sullivan were reported missing on Friday morning after the two reportedly wandered away from their home in Lansdowne Station. RCMP spokesperson Carly McCann says search over the last 6 days has been an all-hands-on-deck operation.
There's been an absolutely incredible turnout from the GSAR teams across the province here in partnership with the RCMP and other resources. I do know that there's been well over 100 every day. The outpouring of support from so many volunteers who've given up so much of their time to be here has been incredible, and I know it's been a great support to the police on scene with this goal that we all have.
Prime Minister Mark Carney held a phone call with the country's provincial and territorial leaders today to brief them on his first meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump. The two leaders met yesterday at the White House to discuss U.S.-Canada relations and the ongoing trade war. Here's what Ontario Premier Doug Ford had to say following the virtual meeting.
We just had a great conversation with the Prime Minister and all the premiers. We all congratulated him on his victory, but also congratulated him on how well he did yesterday and the restraint he showed. I don't think I'd have the restraint that he had yesterday, to be very frank, but in saying that, I think it's a good start on a new relationship. I saw President Trump said really kind things when he just tweeted out, so that's good. It's good for the country. It's good for the U.S. Had an opportunity to speak to the U.S. ambassador this morning and get his take on things. I think everyone's feeling relatively good on the meeting yesterday.
Carney and Trump are expected to meet again in person in June when Carney hosts the G7 Leaders Summit in Alberta. And speaking of Canada-U.S. relations, Premier Smith has named Nathan Cooper as Alberta's new representative in Washington. He replaces James Rajat, who served in the role for 5 years. Cooper was previously Speaker of the provincial legislature. Canada's energy CEOs want the Prime Minister to take action to support the oil and gas sector. Nearly 40 leaders of Canadian energy companies have signed a letter that pitches 5 suggestions to support investment. They include overhauling the government's impact assessment process and reducing regulatory timelines to get projects completed faster. They also echoed Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who has called on Carney to eliminate the emissions cap on oil and gas production and the industrial carbon pricing system, arguing that the provinces should be setting carbon regulations. The Alberta government is looking to eliminate municipal codes of conduct, formalize rules around party finances in local elections, and develop rules under what conditions it can use to amend or repeal a municipal bylaw. Those are among the changes proposed in Bill 50, the Municipal Affairs Statutes Amendment Act, which was introduced by Municipal Affairs Minister Rick McIver. But Indigenous groups say the bill, if passed, will prevent the ability of Status First Nations people to vote in a municipality they reside in.
But when you look at the demographics, look at Treaty 6, look at Treaty 7, now all of a sudden you ask yourself, where is our voice? If I'm 1% of all the First Nations in Alberta, well, where is my voice? I want my voice to continue on. I gave my support and endorsed the mayor that ran for the municipal election the last time. How am I going to endorse him and vote for them this time? That's taken away from me because of the legislation that lies within the province of Alberta. And if you want to take it a step further, I think it's a slap in the face to the First Nations. Takes us back to 1956 where we were not allowed to vote.
When we return, we will have more of the top stories from the West with Forum Daily West. At that same press conference, Indigenous leaders responded to questions from the media, including about possible separation and demands to cease all development and exploration projects should Alberta separate.
The Premier wants to separate with Alberta or Albertans. Well, if you want to separate from Canada and you still have exploration rights, why should we allow you guys to continue to explore within our traditional territories if you want to leave? Pack up your bag and go. That's my message to the Premier. You're not welcome here anymore.
The Chiefs had emergency meetings yesterday with the Treaties 6, 7, and 8 of Alberta. We're very concerned about the rhetoric around separation because it fundamentally forgets that we are the rightful owners of this land. They use the words like sovereignty. Sovereignty is not a word that belongs with Alberta. It's our words. We're the only ones that can use that word. There's nothing sovereign about Alberta, and there'll never be anything sovereign about Alberta.
Prior to today's First Minister's phone call, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith and Ontario Premier Doug Ford have been exchanging barbs. With Smith talking about a potential citizen referendum on separation, Ford says Canada needs to be united to fight U.S. President Donald Trump's tariffs. Smith says she doesn't tell him how to run his province, and she expects that he won't tell her how to run hers.
Well, Doug and I have a great friendship. We don't agree on everything. In fact, I think we supported different people in the last federal election. And so we don't have to agree on everything. But what I will say is we have a constructive conversation at the coffee table. I continue to look forward to having a constructive conversation with him at the coffee table. But he's the Premier of Ontario. I'm the Premier of Alberta. We just have different issues that we have to respond to in our respective jurisdictions.
Well, I just always say, united we stand, divided we fall, and that was my message today. And let's continue making sure that we unite the country, not divide the country. And I spoke pretty strongly in support of Alberta and Saskatchewan because they've been ignored for the last 10 years. They've been treated terribly, to be very frank. And I think the new Prime Minister Carney, understands that.
With the province-wide discussion of secession taking a hold of Albertans since the election, the question on many Canadians' minds remains, is it even possible? Since Premier Smith presented the possibility of a citizen-led petition in order to enact a referendum on such question, the discussion among those for and against separation have been asking what would the process look like and what would the consequences of moving forward with such a proposal mean for Albertans everywhere. BCN's Landon Hickok has more on what the logistics behind secession would look like.
Since Mark Carney's election win last week, a growing sentiment of those who are wanting to see Alberta secede from Canada have been becoming increasingly vocal. An Angus Reid poll that was published back in April said that if the Liberals were to secure government in the latest election, 3 in 10 Albertans would be in favor of a vote for Alberta to secede and become an independent nation. Frustrations from Albertans continue to rise over federal regulations that make it challenging to export natural resources from Alberta to broader markets. But according to an economist at the University of Alberta, it may be a bit more challenging to do so as an independent country.
The primary obstacle, I would say, is that Alberta has to contend with is that it's landlocked. So it would be surrounded by Canada to the north and to the east and west, and the United States to the south. This means that to reach global markets, it has to travel through these other places. And this could create all sorts of problems. So if you want to export oil, for example, it would have to drive it in trucks or send it through a pipeline in either through Canada or the United States. So essentially, Alberta would be subject to regulations for one or both of these countries in order for it to reach global markets. So this might, in a way influence Alberta's global sovereignty as an independent nation. Canada might treat Alberta differently compared to if it's a province. The question is, in terms of long-term viability, how long could the province continue with this model? So for example, the International Energy Agency predicts that global oil demand will reach its peak by 2030 and gradually decrease afterwards. This is just something that to keep in mind, and we're talking about the very long term, 25 years or more.
But to actually separate, the process would require more than just a favorable provincial-wide referendum. In 1999, the House of Commons passed Bill C-20, or the Clarity Act, amid the failed Quebec secession referendum of '95. It states that for a province to successfully separate, a referendum for its population must be held free of ambiguity and present a clear majority.
The Edmonton Police Service is asking for the public's assistance in identifying a suspect linked to a series of sexual assaults in the Charlesworth neighborhood of South Edmonton. According to a news release issued Tuesday evening, the EPS Sexual Assault Section is currently investigating 3 separate incidents, 2 that occurred on April 22nd and a third on April the 2nd. In each case, a man targeted women walking alone along local footpaths. The suspect is described as a South Asian male, approximately 20 to 40 years old, standing between 5 foot 9 inches and 6 feet. He is said to have had a slim build, facial hair, and was last seen wearing a bright pink turban, a dark plaid jacket, and gym pants, and with a white stripe. Anyone who may have information about the suspect's identity or believes they may have been approached by or victimized is urged to contact the Edmonton Police at 780-423-4567. As part of Budget 2025, the province is providing $47 million in capital grants to CASA Mental Health to build live-in and day program use facilities in 3 new locations. This is part of a capital commitment of $75 million over 3 years. CASA is Alberta's second largest provider of community-based youth mental health services. The funding will quadruple the number of CASA house beds in Alberta to about 80. Once fully operational, CASA House facilities will treat more than 300 young Albertans every year. The 3 new locations will be constructed in Fort McMurray, Calgary, and Medicine Hat. This is Mental Health Week, and as part of its commitment to prevent youth suicide and improving the health and well-being of young people, Alberta's government is investing an additional $1 million into youth suicide prevention grants for a total of $4 million from 2024 to 2026. Minister of Children and Family Services Cyril Turchin says the grant program has supported over 2,100 youth experiencing mental health challenges.
Through this grant, we're helping to fund more organizations across the province, 17 in total, that are focused on improving the health and well-being of young people. These organizations provide spaces for youth to make social and emotional connections, giving them a greater sense of belonging. They offer after-school programs, cultural camps, and events, as well as awareness and educational workshops. Today's youth, the pressure is greater than ever. Social media, academic stress, family struggles, and uncertainty about the future can all weigh heavily on their mental health. If you or anyone you know needs to talk to someone, don't delay. Kids Help Phone offers 24/7 support for children, youth, and young adults throughout Alberta and Canada.
Turton says groups at increased risk of suicide include Indigenous, sexual and gender diverse, those experiencing homelessness, immigrant and refugee youth, as well as those in government care or transitioning out of care. Lethbridge Police and Lethbridge Fire and EMS are reminding residents to take safe measures if you're involved in a collision, even if they are considered minor. Crews are encouraging motorists to stay calm under these situations and report to a collision center if the damage seems to be over $5,000.
We want everyone to be safe, and so when we do come across a motor vehicle collision, or if you've had a little fender bender, we just want to make sure that you have safety checks in place. Make sure you prioritize. Is it a small fender bender? If it is, make sure you see if you can clear the road, get out of harm's way. And another part is exchanging information. Sooner or later, you're going to have to exchange that information with your insurance companies. So if you can do it on a friendly basis and not point blame, but gather that information and share it. It just makes your process a little bit easier.
Additionally, emergency crews say that if there is major damage, injuries, or if you're involved in a hit and run, or if the other party seems to be intoxicated, call 911 in those instances. LPS is also reminding residents on their traffic enforcement project this summer that will have motorists that speed, stunt, race, and create excessive noise throughout the city be enforced. Since it began last week, LPS have already issued 46 violation tickets and apprehended 1 impaired driver and 1 suspended driver. Since it began in 2022, LPS have increased monitoring certain areas of the city that motorists tend to perform illegal activities, which results in increased public complaints. Police say that they will show no tolerance to offenders who commit these acts.
This is in addition to our normal traffic control and patrols as well, so it's on or above everything else that we do. So we're gonna have zero tolerance with any vehicles that are caught speeding, stunting, any kind of reckless behavior in that manner. We've had a lot of citizen concerns lately, mostly Mayor McGrath, Métis Trail, Scenic Drive. So as our initiative moves forward, we're gonna focus on those areas.
The enforcement project will run until September.